We have 8 matches so far for this card, and let's go through them right now because as of today, Wednesday, we have for the well, let me just pull this up here so it's a bit easier to read. Not pictured here is the buy-in match between MJF and Adam Cole taking on Aussie Open, Mark Davis and Kyle Fletcher for the ROH Tag Team Championships. And then on the show proper, we have FTR taking on the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team titles. We've got Hikaru Shida versus Tony Storm and Saraya and Dr. Britt Baker for the AEW Women's Championship. We have Darby Allin and Sting versus the Mogul Embassy's AR Fox and Swerve Strickland for in a tag team coffin match. Yes, the coffin is a big part of this too. And then we also have the Golden Elite, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page versus Bullet Club Gold's Juice and Jay and Konosuke Takeshita with Don Callis.
I'm looking forward to the match. I think it's going to be really good. This one was the one when this leaked that just seemed to cause a bloody riot online. The extent to which people were hating on this match and referring to it as just mid-card shit was surprising to me, but I guess in the absence of the big singles matches that they wanted, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. I think that level of vitriol is unfortunately going to damage the perception of the match. I actually thought this whole, like the setup was kind of clunky, but I think the reason I thought it was clunky was because we all knew where it was heading. And so it just seemed like, okay, we have to connect the dots. We have to get there now. I feel sorry for this match because I think it's going to be really good. It's just poisoned by the reaction that it got when it was leaked online.
Yeah, well, I think that reaction, I haven't seen the reactions that you have, but if there's sort of criticism to this match's announcement, I do feel like it's justified. Or at least, compared to maybe what expectations might have been. People, again, you have to remember again, Kate, people who bought tickets to this thing or people who were looking forward to the show, I think we're expecting, at best, a Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay 3 to be in this stadium. And then maybe at the very least, a Kenny Omega singles match. To have a multi-man, 6-man tag, a trios match with Kenny Omega, and granted, 2 of his closest tag team partners in Kota Ibushi, who I still consider an attraction, and Hangman Page together. It's going to be a good match. There's no doubt about it. But like you mentioned earlier, I don't see much story culmination here. If anything, this is to lead us to Kenny Omega versus Konosuke Takeshita the next week. And rather than, on a stage as big as that, a stage that I think so many people considered like a WrestleMania level stage, to get a prelude match and not even for, an Ospreay versus Kenny, I can understand why people would be so disappointed.
I can understand it to a certain extent. Certainly the people who bought tickets in good faith and were thinking, this is going to be, I love what this company is doing. I've been really into the characters. I feel very excited by where they are currently, and who had the expectation of getting good, high, banner singles matches. I get that. I think where my sympathy begins to wane, and I did see a lot of this online, were people who have basically sort of thought like, okay, this company has lost its luster. I haven't been impressed with anything that they've done in months. And to people who have that mindset, who went out and spent hundreds of pounds on getting tickets to a show from a company that has apparently been disappointing them for months, I don't think you then get to say, I'm so angry that I'm disappointed, because what were you expecting? So I think that and again, I understand the disappointment in not getting some of these people in big singles matches. I really do. And I think a lot of it is good faith criticism, but I saw a lot of what I would consider bad faith criticism coming from people who, as I said, if you haven't liked what the company has been doing up until this point, then getting angry that they're putting on a card that you don't like is akin to getting angry at the casino when you lose your money.
Have they explained Juice and Jay's involvement in this feud?
Not exactly. I mean, they did make a big deal out of the fact that all of them were going to show up at Dynamite when they announced the Guns versus the Bucks on Collision. There's not no, beyond that. No, they haven't. And again, that's why it feels like maybe. I was going to say maybe you're starting off something, but no, of course you're not, because everyone's kind of siloed on their own shows. So, I agree, it does feel shoehorned, and that's why I was saying that this build up, the two sort of background scenes felt pretty clunky to me. But
obviously, between
there's
Jay
no
White,
good explanation.
I mean, between Jay White and Kenny Omega, I mean, there's obviously enough history between their Bullet Club connections to be able to tell those stories. I believe it was Jay that actually replaced Kenny as leader, at least in very close succession from one to the other. And I feel like it's easy to tell the story, but I think it's the idea that it's we've had no indication that this would be any sort of culminating point with either Kenny Omega or Jay White or Juice Robinson's stories on their own TV shows so far. And that's just how Tony Khan seems to book, right? Like sometimes he books with the match first and then you tell the story.
I think all I kept thinking too for this first half of the show was I remember driving at one point from Montreal to Toronto, and I noticed that I was just making really good time. I glanced at the speedometer and realized that I was driving at about 160 kilometers an hour. It's about 100 miles per hour for those metric resistors. And I remember thinking wow, I feel like I'm getting there. I feel like everything is working, but I also know it's a bad idea to go this fast. And that's sort of how I felt watching the beginning of this episode. It's like, we're getting there, but my God, are we rushing? And it shouldn't feel this way. Again, it's the biggest show of your entire company's history. This should have been where you were very careful with the planning and execution. And especially, you're going to have problems with injuries. That I would say particularly affects the women's division right now. But you need to approach this in a much more systematic and analytical way in order to make sure that your biggest show feels like your biggest show.
And then we have Stadium Stampede with Eddie Kingston, Orange Cassidy, the Best Friends, and the Lucha Brothers taking on Blackpool Combat Club's John Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, and 3 to-be-announced partners.
I did not see, there's been a lot leaked about what we could expect. And of course, 2 of them got confirmed tonight. This one was not. And to me, it's by far the most exciting announcement of the night. The idea of doing a Stadium Stampede match in Wembley is just crazy. And I want to see how they do it. I think obviously you want to take advantage of the whole structure of you need a way to engage the crowd on an ongoing basis. I think you heard the reactions, the sort of building reactions, the more people came out. These guys all have pretty high currency with the crowd now, including the Best Friends, who I think had been very much on the back burner. They had that great parking lot match a couple of weeks ago. And so, the crowd was hot for them and it just built, they're even hotter for the Lucha Brothers. And then Eddie comes out and everyone loses their mind. So this was a very exciting moment for me. And I thought when I heard that, I'm like, okay, that's going to help. That's going to help offset some of the criticism that they have been getting for this show, because this is a big deal and it's something that does specifically take advantage of the location.
Yeah, it remains to be seen how different this will be from Anarchy in the Arena, which they did not that long ago. I certainly don't anticipate maybe a cinematic match. The way that Stadium Stampedes in the past have been, especially with a group as serious as the Blackpool Combat Club. So is this going to just be maybe a bigger version of, Anarchy in the Arena throughout the venue, perhaps?
I think that they may incorporate some cinematic elements, but yeah, my feeling would be it's going to be a little more like Anarchy in the Arena, but just taking advantage of Wembley. I'd be surprised if they didn't have some cinematic parts, but I guess having that many people involved could potentially allow you to be doing spots in the crowd and also spots backstage, if you will, at once.
Yeah, I think as a way to give us a multi-man match rather than, the clear indication to me at least seems like it might be Mox versus Orange Cassidy at All Out. Or at least that's what I'm feeling might be the big match, and then maybe you do Kingston and Claudio as well or something like that. But to give us some sort of like prelude to it in a multi-man setting, and to not have it feel like it's just sort of like a throwaway undercard mid-card match by labeling it Stadium Stampede, I mean, which in the past has main evented double or nothings, makes it feel like it's a big deal. So let's see what the other three are that could help elevate maybe what this is. But I think it's the match type alone that'll probably have a lot of people very interested for this being an anticipated match. Will Ospreay versus Chris Jericho.
I didn't see anyone who was excited about seeing it. I'm still not thrilled about seeing. I get, I'm glad that they mentioned the story about them missing out on the opportunity to have that match, but I guess it's one of those things, and this is the difference that you have to negotiate between star power and a great match. When Sammy Guevara ran in at the end, I would just rather see a really good match. So I'm sitting there thinking, I think I'd rather see Guevara versus Ospreay, and perhaps we'll get that at some point. But that's not your marquee match. Jericho versus Ospreay is much more, but I just don't know. Is that the best use of Will Ospreay on a card like this? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think a Jericho Ospreay match could be very good. I think like big stadium Jericho in a singles context with enough bells and whistles. Not that he really needs it. I think the man can still go, and especially against Will Ospreay. The match is going to be actually very good. Is my prediction.
Yeah, I would like to think so. I'm also just thinking like that the last time Jericho's last pay-per-view match was versus Adam Cole, right? Like that one, that one didn't go so well. And I think it'll be a great match. Is it a big enough match to, I think, offset some of the disappointments with the build to this card? I don't know if I'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you were talking about a Chris Jericho right now that I think is maybe suffering from some of the lowest reviewed, most poorly reviewed segments or feuds in quite a while. So he doesn't necessarily have so much goodwill from the audience as he did maybe even a year ago.
And he certainly won't in the UK. That's the other thing, is that right now you've got Callis, who's this monster heel, who is aligned with Ospreay, who in the UK is absolutely going to be the babyface.
Yeah.
So the dynamic is just like, this is one that to me, you do it all out and you find something else for Ospreay to do it all in, because once you move to the UK, you completely lose the dynamic.
So, again, I mean, whether or not Will Ospreay was supposed to be on this card, or if he kind of, no pun intended, willed himself into a spot on the show at the press conference for Forbidden Door, we don't know. It's hard for me to think if you had access to a Will Ospreay through New Japan that you wouldn't put him in London. But nonetheless, this, look at it. I think you're going to get a Will Ospreay win in London, and for that reason, does that limit the options of opponents that you could pair him with from the AEW roster that's regularly featured on TV? I can also see them, Jericho and Callis is a major storyline right now, and Tony probably wants it featured at All In, and maybe this felt like the best fit. I'm certainly of the boat that is wanting. Honestly, anything but Omega versus Ospreay involving Ospreay was going to get a big deal of criticism. Now, would it have been less if it was, Ospreay versus Hangman Page or CM Punk or something like that?
Well, even if you were going to do a multi-man match like you did like Omega, Hangman, and Ibushi versus Takeshita, Ospreay, and someone else, that feels to me, because of the story involved, like a bigger 6-man match than the one that you've got. So.
Right. So Jericho Ospreay again, in the body of this Callis thing, I predict that Jericho will probably be a heel that evening. Jericho Ospreay is,
and he has no problem playing one.
Yeah, and then somehow they'll, just explain some sort of like bizarre world thing to carry the TV show on. No mention of the United Kingdom Championship, the newly rebranded United Kingdom Championship. And the graphic doesn't state as much either. So I wondered what the renaming was, I guess, other than, to promote for some other UK shows. And then in the main event, Adam Cole versus MJF for the AEW World Championship. If you am I missing anything?
Well, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'm assuming we're getting Punk versus Joe.
Yes, that seems to be the direction. Do you think that we'll have any other additions for the TBS Championship?
That's what I was thinking, was that we probably will get something for Statlander. I don't know. Maybe a four-way, another four-way, like her and Willow and Mercedes and Diamante.
Why not just do Willow, I guess? Like if you...
That's what I do. But I don't know if you're having a four-way for your world title. It's like a singles match feels like the bigger deal in a way. I don't know.
And is that bad?
I mean.
Is that a bad thing?
It is if it's your secondary title.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to have Statlander versus Willow. I think that could work. AEW usually does babyface versus babyface dynamics pretty well, although I think that Willow will be the clearer babyface there and has the momentum.
Yeah, and obviously they're building a whole lot for All Out as well, so it remains to be seen what gets announced for that show.